Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is going to be a video about cross stitching. My name is Rosanna and I go by Bright and Dusty here on YouTube and on Instagram. This is, I believe it is Flosstube video number 12 for me. And today I have a couple of finishes to share. I have very few whips because mostly I was concentrating on one of the things that I finished, but I have a couple of new starts to show. I have been gearing up for fall stitching quite a bit, so I'm going to talk about my plans for fall stitching. And yeah, it's the end of the summer, so there's been a lot of flea markets and opportunities to find some good haul. So I do have some haul to show, and yeah, so it's going to be pretty standard. If this is your first time visiting my channel, thank you so much for stopping by, and if you're returning, I really appreciate all your support. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. But I will just jump right in with my FFO. So this is a pattern from Lindy Stitch's Spooky Book. I had finished it a couple of months ago, but I finished the stitching, but I hadn't turned it into anything yet. This is the one I did, Grave Fellows. So I will show you my FFO on that. So I decided to do a pillow finish. This is the first time I ever made a pillow out of one of my cross stitches. I used Vanna Pfeiffer's tutorial on how to do a pillow finish, and I will link that in the description box. I found that to be very helpful. She really just takes you step by step through the process, and mostly I think I just did exactly what she said. I don't think I really changed anything. I decided not to do a chenille border on this one for my next pillow. I have another one I want to turn into a pillow, and I think I will try to do a chenille border on that one, but for this one I just left it plain. And I am really pleased with the way it turned out. I think this coordinating fabric looks amazing. And this is just a fabric. I had used it before to make a project bag, and I had some left over, and I just got this fabric, I think from Walmart, but it works perfectly for this. And yeah, this was a linen napkin that I had dyed myself, and I'm very pleased with how it looks. And yeah, this pillow turned out maybe a little bit bigger than I would have preferred. I mean, that's my own fault. I didn't cut the margins. But I was a little, it was my first pillow. I was a little afraid I was going to mess it up, and I didn't want the margins to be too small and then risk not getting it all, the stitching all in there correctly. So it turned out a little bit bigger than maybe was necessary, but that's okay. I stuffed it with the walnut shells, crushed walnut shells on the bottom, and then the rest of it is polyfill. And I didn't know this until watching Vanna Pfeiffer's video tutorial, but the crushed walnut shells are actually available as a product for pet lizards, because you use that in their cage. So that was the cheapest way to get it, the crushed walnut shells, and it was very inexpensive. So that was a great tip that I learned from Vanna's video. And I guess that's about it. I did make, it's funny, I made a little practice pillow with that's a VW bug. Yeah, This pillow is not perfect, but I just wanted to practice to make sure I didn't like totally mess it up. So my pillows. I did use my sewing machine, you know, to put the two sides together, and that ended up working fine. So that was my FFO. And my other finish is just a regular finish. I haven't framed it yet, but I'll show that now. This is Unicorn's Garden by Sprouting Lupine. So some stats on this. I had started this on April 25th and I finished it on August 22nd. I chose not to do, in the original pattern, there's more stitching down here. There's a bunch of leaves and stuff, and it looks really cool, but I decided not to do that part. I figured out in Pattern Keeper that part was about 2,500 stitches. So that saved me a lot of time by deciding not to do that. So ultimately, I believe the stitch count of my version here is approximately about like 8,500. So I am really pleased that I was able to finish this while I was in the middle of Deadly Aquarium. I wasn't really expecting that to happen, but Sprouting Lupine's coming out with Graveyard Guardian now for the Needlework Marketplace, and then I believe at the end of September it'll come out as a PDF. So I really want to do that pattern, and for whatever reason I just didn't want to start another project by Sprouting Lupine until I finished this one. So that's what encouraged me to really move on this. And yeah, I'm pretty surprised that I was able to just knock it out while I was, you know, busy with other stuff. And yeah, this is not perfect. This had a few things going against it. Nothing to do with the pattern, mostly to do with the fabric. And this was a challenging fabric, partly because it was dark, and partly because the weave of it was not quite even, because this is a piece of 32 count Belgian linen that I found in an old kit from the 1970s. I talked about it before. And then I dyed it myself. And the weave of it is not as even as, you know, ideally it would be for cross stitch. So it was more of a challenge just to get the counting correct, and I wasn't always right. But the great thing about this pattern was that it ultimately didn't really matter, because all of these elements are kind of free floating. As long as they're not touching each other, I didn't really care if the count was a little bit off. So it ended up working out fine. I am fine with how the fabric turned out with the finished piece, and I think it looks beautiful. I absolutely love all the colors. This was such a fun piece to work on. I love unicorns, so for me this was a real pleasure. And I am looking forward to the next Sprouting Lupine, which I will be doing, which is the Graveyard Guardian. I think she did come out with a few other ones too for Needlework Marketplace. Okay, so that was my finish. Now I do have a few new starts. The first one, this is called Widower Frog by Night Spirit Studio. And I have a very small start on this. Let me grab it. Okay, I found it. Yeah, I just have a very small start. Basically, the getting started with the flowers. So Night Spirit Studio charted a pair. There's the Widow Frog and the Widower Frog. I'm only gonna do Widower Frog. I just like that one. I think it's really, I like, I think he looks really cute, like, and I enjoy stitching animals that are like dressed up. So, I'm just gonna do the Widower Frog, and it's not really that big. And this fabric is a mystery linen that I dye myself. The weave is a lot more even than the one I did with Unicorn's Garden, so I'm not too worried about it. So far it's going fine. And I'm just using like Call for DMCs. So just, yeah, small start on that. But as I said at the beginning of the video, I'm getting really into like fall stitching, which I would consider this kind of like falling in that category because it's a little spooky and it's on dark fabric. So this is one that I would like to make some more progress on here now that we're getting into fall. Okay. And then this new start requires a little bit of a preamble. I was at a flea market a few weeks ago, and it's one that happens like every year in upstate New York because it goes on in conjunction with another festival. So it's just a once a year thing. And I always find like a few things there. Most of it though is like people selling a lot of like old tools. You know, you can imagine like kind of like rusted tools and things like that. Not usually the kind of thing I'm interested in, but I generally find like 2 or 3 things at this flea market, and it's not that far away, so I always go. This year, it was a little crazy because I was like about to leave the flea market, and then I walked down one of the rows and realized I hadn't seen this row yet. And there was this booth that had a ton of cross-stitching stuff. I think whoever was running that booth, I mean, they must have had a family member who had passed away or something, and they were unloading all of this stuff. Unfortunately, there was a lady who had beat me to it, who had gotten to this booth first. And I kid you not, she was filling up an entire wagon full of patterns. And I was like, oh, are the cross-stitch patterns for sale? Because I thought she like owned the booth. And she was like, oh, I'm buying them. And I, like, my jaw dropped a little bit. And I was like, oh darn, you know, like I missed out. This lady beat me to it. So I was like, okay. And I went to walk around for a little while more. And I decided I'm just gonna stop back at that booth, you know, after that other lady had made her purchase, just to see if she had passed on anything. If I could like get some stray patterns that she didn't want or something like that. So I went back. And first of all, for whatever reason, this woman did not want any of the fabric. So I did get a lot of fabric from this booth, which was awesome because I do need to improve my stash of fabric. So I was really excited about that. I have no idea why she didn't want it. Like, she wanted all those patterns, but she didn't want the fabric. But, you know, I guess I just got lucky. And then the other thing was that there was a very large plastic tote bin that, unfortunately, it had clearly got some water damage. So the lady who had purchased all the patterns, she had passed over that bin. Like, she didn't want any of that stuff because some of it was water damaged. So I was like, what the heck? I'm just gonna dig through this little tote. Or actually, it was a big tote. A very big plastic bin. I'm just gonna dig through it, despite the fact that some of them, you know, got wet, and see if there's anything salvageable. And there absolutely was. There were a lot of patterns in there. They were in plastic sleeves, a lot of them, and they really didn't have any damage at all. And then there were some that, yeah, they were wet, but like, you know, they were fine. The ink hadn't run, the patterns were completely legible, and I was like, well, I'll just get them home and put them out in the sun for a little bit and they'll be fine. So that's what I ended up doing. I got quite a number of patterns. I mean, nowhere near what that other woman had got. I am really curious what she took home, because there were so many patterns, and I suspect that there were like a lot of really good ones. But I can't complain. I got a really good haul from that flea market. And so all of that is just a big preamble to talk about my new start. And let me find it really quick. Okay. So this is one of the things that I rescued from that water damaged bin. Let me make sure I have the right thing here. Yeah. So this is a Halloween cross-stitch magazine from 2009. And when I found it in the bin, I was just like, oh, cool, like a Halloween magazine. I love finding Christmas or Halloween cross-stitch magazines because they have a ton of patterns and it's really fun to look through them. So I snatched this up. You can see it is a little bit damaged up here, but overall it's fine. Everything's completely legible. So I got it home and I was going through all the stuff that I had found. And this pattern is one of the ones in this magazine. It is by the Primitive Needle. It is called Halloween Revelry. So it's out of print. All of the ones by the Primitive Needle are out of print. I had first learned about the Primitive Needle, I think, on Cross Stitch the Globe's channel, where they were talking about a lot of out of print, hard to find patterns and stuff. And Lisa Roswell, who was the designer for the Primitive Needle, she had passed away, and that's when her patterns stopped being produced. So I got this home and I was like, wow. Like, I never really thought I was gonna get an opportunity to stitch one of these. And it's a really neat pattern. Like, look at these cats. So I was so excited about that. And I got a start on it. So I pulled overdye floss from my stash for this because there wasn't really that many colors. And I had ones that would work fine. I really like the way this orange one is looking. So yeah, I've got the borders started. I took this one with me traveling last weekend, so I was able to make some headway. And this fabric is 40 count sand by Picture This Plus, and I'm doing 1/2. So that was my new start from my haul that I got from that flea market. I haven't started this one yet, but I did kit it. Sorry for the crinkling. This is Ink Circle's Masquerade. This is another one I found at the flea market. It is so cute with these cats and everything. The little poem, things are seldom what they seem, skim milk masquerades as cream. And then you got like little cream milk bottles up here and down here. And the pattern explains that that is a quote from a Gilbert and Sullivan opera, comic opera. And I just thought this was delightful and really good for Halloween. So I did kit this one up. Once again, just using over dyes from my stash. And this is a piece of fabric that I also got from the flea market. And it's kind of like blue, light purple. It is a 32 count Lugana. And I made a special bag for these two Halloween projects. I just put them both in the same bag, and I used this pumpkin fabric. So I am hoping to get this one started pretty soon. I have it all kitted, it's just a matter of getting it on a Q-snap and starting it. All right. My only other whip was Stitching Christmas by Twin Peak Primitives. And the reason I made progress on this was because Andrew and I took a little trip to the Poconos last weekend. And I took this specifically because I wanted to see if I could do car stitching, you know, as a passenger. So I did make a little bit of progress like over here in the car. I just did stitching in hand in the car for a bit while Andrew was driving. And I've got this other spool outlined over here, which is good because I think I'm just gonna kind of keep this one around 4 times when I just need fill-in stitching. Yeah, like in the car or traveling. I'm not in a hurry to finish this or anything. So I made a little bit of progress. This is 32 count Crystal Da Vinci that I got through 1, 2, 3 stitches. Picture this plus. And I am doing 2 over 2. And I love this fabric. I love the way it's looking. And as for car stitching, you know, obviously it's not my favorite, but I did all right with it. I did make some progress. I didn't get like really car sick or anything like that. But the jostling of the car, you know, it makes it a little annoying. But it was fine. I'm glad to know that I can do it. And my only other whip really is the Deadly Aquarium, and I'm not going to show it just because it's almost done. By the time I do my next video, it's going to be completely done. So I'm just going to hold off and show it then. I'm really excited for that to be finished. I am basically caught up, except for a little bit of backstitching, so I am confident that I will be able to finish that within the first couple weeks of September. And that kind of brings me into plans because, yeah, now that Deadly Aquarium is ending, I am super excited because I'm going to pick a different focus piece, and I've decided I think I'm going to pick Praiseworthy Stitches. CD Pumpkin Cottage. I do have a small start on this. You know, it's not much. I do have a small start. This is a really big project. And now that Deli Aquarium is ending, I am really pleased with how that stitch along worked out for me. For me, it was great to have the structure to divide up the pattern. Well, you know, Lola Crow divided up the pattern for us. And for me, I enjoyed, like, because it would come out on Fridays, and then most of the time, as long as I wasn't traveling on the weekend, I would just work on it like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that section will be done, and I could work on other things during the week. So that worked out so well for me. I am kind of considering just dividing this up on my own, sort of like that. And just trying to make weekly progress, but not doing it every single day. Maybe doing the same thing, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would work primarily on this. And then the rest of the week I would do different things. So that is my thought process for this. For me, this is going to be a challenging pattern. I can't use it in Pattern Keeper for one thing. So that's going to be an adventure just because it's so large. And then I am also changing the color of the house from green to yellow. So I'm going to have to figure that out. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think if I divide up the pattern in the way I just described, I will be able to make significant progress on this during the fall. So that is my hope. And if that's my main focus piece, other huge projects are going to be on the back burner. That being said, I do want to work on some smaller stuff. One of them is, it's called the Sally Spencer Sampler. And let me figure out where I put it. So Birds of a Feather Sally Spencer Sampler. I found this pattern at an antique mall months ago. I haven't started it yet. However, what I did do is I bought the Vicki Clayton silk conversion for this pattern because it's so few colors. There's only 6. The silk conversion only ended up being like $20. So I thought that that was like a reasonable price and just a good way for me to dip my toe into Vicki Clayton silks and see how I like those. So I am planning for this one to be a new start sometime soon. I'm going to do it on a 40 count and do 1 strand because I don't want to run out of floss. And yeah, I saw that, I think it's Bridget the Museum Stitcher. I think on her last video, she showed some progress on this. And I think Sarah from Sarah's Stitchy Spot might also be working on this. So I'm looking for, excuse me, I'm looking forward to seeing their progress. And yeah, it looks like a really fun pattern. So that's one of my planned starts. Another start, this is a pretty small one. So this is actually a really recent edition of Just Cross Stitch magazine. I happened to find this secondhand somehow. But it's really recent. I think you could probably still get this just like at the store, Joann Fabrics or whatever. But I was so thrilled because one of the patterns in here is this one. Enchanted Autumn Cabin by Flossie Fox Shop. And I have wanted to start one of these Flossie Fox shops for a while. I really like this one. It's so cute. I love the dragon. This dragon here, so cute. I love the black background. Again, it's like fall themed, so it works perfectly for what I'm trying to do now with fall stitching. So I'm thinking I'm gonna start this pretty soon, and I'm thinking of doing it on this. It's called 18 count Damask Ada, and I have no idea. It's like, I mean, clearly it's some kind of synthetic, like, I don't know if it's polyester or what kind of material this is, but it's like a little shiny, and it's black. And I don't know, have any of you ever worked on Damask Ada? Is it like a nightmare? I'm a little curious. I might just try to put in like 50 stitches or something, and then if I hate it, I'll just switch to regular black Ada. But I figured I have this. I may as well try it. So that's my thought for that. I think I would probably do one strand on an 18 count. I don't know, we'll see. We'll see how the coverage looks on the black background. And then another plan that I have is possibly to participate in the hashtag Make It Murder Sal, hosted by Cross Stitch the Globe. I'm still deciding. I did find the perfect pattern for it. I'm not going to show it because I would prefer it to be a surprise if I end up doing it. But it is from this book that I found at a thrift shop, Quick to Stitch cross stitch cards. And the nice thing is that the pattern is not very big. It's 65 by 65. And the concept that I have for it, I think it would work for the stitch along, but then I think it would also work as a gift for somebody that I have in mind. So I'm thinking of maybe just like kind of killing two birds with one stone and joining in on the Make It Murder Sal. The concept of this Sal is that you choose a pattern that is like kind of cutesy, and then you just add like little scary elements to it. You know, like some people are gonna add like little drops of blood or what have you. Just, I don't know, it's kind of fun for Halloween just to do something a little spooky and scary. And I know a lot of people are gonna use the tiny towns, but I would obviously be doing something different. But yeah, and I figure I got this book, I may as well stitch something from it. But that is on my radar. They're giving a lot of time to do it. I don't think they're expecting it to be done until like February or something, but I would like to have mine, if I do it, I'd like to have mine done like by Christmas time so I can give it as a gift to somebody I have in mind. But we'll see. I do think it's a fun concept. All right. And then the rest of my plans is just, I am planning to get back into my fall stitching. I have a lot of whips that I have in the works. I would like to make a lot more progress on Jack's Bash, Plum Street Samplers in the next few months. Because right now I'm this far. And I really love this pattern. Like I said, I think Praiseworthy Stitches will be my focus piece, CD Pumpkin Cottage, but then if I can make some real progress on Jack's Bash, that would be amazing. The other fall project I'm working on is the turkey from Prairie Schooler Harvest Time, and I'm actually gonna restart this, I think, because when I started it, I did 2/1 on like a 28 count Monaco, and it's too dense. I'm just not enjoying it. And I'm thinking when I restart, I might just do the turkey. I don't necessarily know if I want to do all the leaves. So I'm gonna find a different piece of fabric. I'm gonna start this one over. So that is another goal. Because I love that turkey. I want the turkey on my wall. And I want it to be like a bigger size than like the 2/1 on 28 count. Okay, so that covers finishes, whips, new starts, and plans. Before I get into haul, I'm gonna show another rescued finished cross stitch. I found this one probably about a year ago at a thrift shop, and it is a dimensions kit. I looked it up online. The dimensions kit is a dimensions gold kit called Celestial Angel. So this is big and it's heavy, but okay. So yeah, when I saw this at the thrift store, I was like, whoa. I mean, not only is the piece itself, like the stitched piece, big, but the way they framed it and everything and matted it, I mean, this is like a solid wood frame, and it's like really heavy. The stitcher did not frame it under glass. I believe there is some quilt batting behind it because it's kind of puffy. And it is gorgeous. All of the little elements, details, sparkly things, sparkly thread. This area is like fringed. So cool. And it's really impressive. Up on the wall. It's beautiful. So yeah, you see dimensions kits everywhere, and you kind of look at them in the package and you're like, like that doesn't look that great. But then you see one actually done and you're like, wow. So yeah, I believe there's also like a mini version of this, like a smaller kit with the same angel or a similar angel, because like I was at the New York State Fair last year looking at the cross stitches, and I was like, oh wow, that's like the same angel I have on my wall, except it was like petite. So there must be different versions of this. But that is the rescued cross stitch for this video. Okay, so why don't I get into a little bit of haul here. So from that flea market, I'm not going to show everything, just like a couple pieces of fabric that I think are interesting, and then a few of the patterns. But so first of all, this is a giant, like a giant cut of Lugana. Like dyed Lugana. It kind of looks like clouds almost. It's humongous. I wonder if the original owner was planning to make like an Afghan or something. Or like a cross-stitch quilt. I don't know. But this is huge. And it's a 32 count. So, you know, eventually I will use at least parts of this for something. But this is one of the pieces of fabric that I found. Yeah, and it says it was labeled Rockabye. Yeah, I looked that up. I wasn't really able to find like the original dyer. I think it might be a silk weaver, because there were a couple of other silk weavers in there. Silk Weaver Company. I think that might be where it's from. Another piece of fabric is interesting. This is an 18 count linen. So the squares are large. And the person who originally owned it had written on here, winter sampler, lavender and lace. I believe what they actually meant was winter sampler by Butternut Road. Because I took a look at that online, and the instructions do say, you know, use one of these very large square linens. And then of course you have to use like specific threads that are thick enough for this. So at Christmas time, I am thinking about maybe starting this on this fabric because I'm really intrigued. I think it's going to turn out huge. So I might not do the whole thing because at the top there's like an alphabet and stuff. I might not do that part. I'd rather just do like the pictures. So that was neat. And yeah, I found other fabric. I'm not gonna go through all of it, but let me show a couple of the patterns that I rescued from that tote that had a bunch of water damage. It's so funny. I mean, I suspect that the rest of that probably ended up in the trash because a lot of the ones that had not been protected in plastic, like they were torn because they got too wet. So yeah, the ones that I rescued, I probably really did just rescue them from being totally thrown away. So anyway, here's two of the ones that I got from that bin, which I was very excited because I had been on Brenda Key's website before and was really admiring all of the samplers. They're very, very beautiful. The ones that I found, this is the Providence sampler. And then this one is Country House sampler. And I think this is the one that I like the most. So I don't really have plans immediately to start it because for sampler September, I would like to concentrate on Sally Spencer. But, you know, I'm definitely planning to do this one at some point. I also found Passione Recamo. This is called Winter Sampler, and the mock-up is a digital mock-up. It's not an actual stitched piece, but I have a feeling that this would turn out very beautiful stitched up. And I love those colors, the blue, roses. So that's a possibility at some point. I found Bobby G. Merry Christmas. It's a snowflake Christmas. And I had seen Bobby G's designs online. A lot of Christmas ornament stuff that I really liked. So I was happy to find this. I think it's super cute. I love snowflakes. This one really struck me. Spring Angel, Lone Elm Lane. I have no idea about that company. I tried to look it up. I really don't know. But this is so cool. It's just like, it's really interesting. Like the colors on the horizon back here. I think that might be a little cat or something. And then this border. Wow. This was actually not from the flea market. I found this thrifting elsewhere, but yeah, it's just a piece of fabric that had this guy on it. I tried to like image search it to see if I could figure out what it was, but I haven't been able to. I'm wondering if maybe it was a piece with a lot of Santas, just because it's kind of odd that he's down there in the corner like that. But I don't know. If anyone recognizes this, tell me what it is. I am curious. I would finish it if I knew, but I don't know. And then Prairie Schooler, Prairie Garden. This is so pretty. Yeah, I would like to do this someday. Not right now because it's not, you know, spring, but I think that covered everything I wanted to show from like the flea market and stuff. I think this is the last piece of haul. Hello from Liz Matthews and her mom, Kathy Barrick, did a video where they were talking about their new releases. Kathy Barrick has designed a pattern called Tombstones, I think, that's coming out for the Needlework Marketplace. And the idea is you stitch the patterns on a 40 count and then they are the right size to fit on these specific tombstones, which are available at Michael's. I got mine last week when they were on super sale. So I paid like $7.50 a piece for these. So I don't have the pattern yet. I mean, it just came out, so, you know, I'll worry about that later. But they're on the smaller side. I don't think they would take like really long to stitch up, and then I think they will look really cool on these. So these are available at Michael's still. All right. I believe that concludes everything stitching related and everything haul related. Yes, I will take a few minutes to talk about some audiobooks that I have been listening to. If you're not interested in books, you're not going to miss anything after this. So I will catch you next time. Thank you so much if you made it this far and listened to my stories about strange flea markets that I go to. But otherwise, if you are interested in hearing about books, it's been a long time since I've talked about books, so I have a fair amount to mention. The first author I'll talk about is Abby Jimenez, and up until maybe like 2 months ago, I hadn't read any of her books. At this point, I have listened to 4 of them in their entirety. So she is a contemporary romance author, women's fiction. like, her novels are not very steamy, but they're definitely romance. And that is kind of my comfort zone as far as like popular fiction is concerned. I had been making some adventures into like the fantasy genre recently, but you know, contemporary romance or historical romance is always going to be kind of my comfort zone and what I fall back on when I just want to listen to something fun. So yeah, I started listening to Abby Jimenez. The 4 books I listened to, I'm just going to list them out. Life's Too Short, Just for the Summer, Part of Your World, and Yours Truly. And all of her books are very similar to each other. That's pretty typical. I mean, these people just have a career kind of like writing a novel a year or something like that, and they, you know, they write what their fans want in generally, I think. So they're all pretty similar to each other. But I will say, you know, I am not someone who will sit and finish an audiobook just for the sake of it. You know, if I don't like it, I'm not going to finish it. So the fact that I did listen to all of these in their entirety means that, you know, I got something out of them. I found them very compelling. I like the subject matter and, you know, the characters for the most part. My favorite one, I think I would say, is Yours Truly. So this is a story, the characters are Brianna and Jacob. And the reason this one struck me more than the others is because it depicts a character with pretty significant social anxiety. Jacob, like the hero, he suffers from a lot of social anxiety. And it's like a huge theme in the book is him kind of trying to navigate the world when he has so much anxiety, and how Brianna has to like learn to kind of cope with his anxiety as well. And that was a very interesting theme to me. I don't know that I've read another book that deals with that topic in such a thorough way. And it really resonated with me as someone, you know, who has experienced a lot of social anxiety myself in my own life. I really did appreciate kind of like seeing this character and getting to know his thought process, because, you know, I saw a lot of myself in him. So I thought that book was really interesting, really well done. Abby Jimenez, in my opinion, is very good at characterization. And that would be probably the one out of the 4 that I would recommend the most. But the other ones I also enjoyed. Part of Your World was about Alexis and Daniel. And the trope of this story is that she's kind of a city girl. She has a really, you know, impressive job as a surgeon at a hospital. And she ends up in this smaller town where she meets Daniel, and she, you know, learns that there might be a little bit more to life than being obsessed with your career. The other part of this book was that she has a narcissistic father, and those parts of the novel were kind of like, you know, kind of hard to listen to, because her father was terrible and just like completely out of touch with reality. You know, he would be like ashamed of the weirdest things regarding his children. And unfortunately, Alexis, you know, she had been raised in this environment where she was just kind of expected to put up with you know, his like abuse of her, emotional abuse. So a lot of the novel is about her overcoming that and just becoming more aware of what her father is doing and how it is affecting her. So interesting themes again. I don't love like hearing about narcissists, but I do think it had an important story to tell. Just for the summer, this one is about Emma and Justin. And this is another one that has an emotionally abusive parent. Emma's mom is also terrible. And Emma, she can't really see it for what it is, because ever since she was a child, her mom has been playing like these really crazy mind games with her daughter. Emma has a really hard time forming commitments with anyone. She's a traveling nurse, so she always just like jumps from place to place because she can't really envision a life for herself that is stable. She's just been living in survival mode because of her mother. So once again, the novel is about her overcoming that struggle from her childhood, you know, going into her adulthood and everything. And Justin, you know, helps her through that. And yeah, it was an enjoyable listen. Again, it's not my favorite. I think yours truly was my favorite, but that one was also pretty good. Life's Too Short, that's the one I listened to most recently. That one is about Vanessa and Adrian. Vanessa, her family has a history of ALS in the family, which they believe is hereditary, because the mom and the older sister got the disease and passed away. So Vanessa, the conflict of the novel is that, you know, she's afraid that her time is, you know, limited. She lives just with the reality that she might not make it, you know, into her 30s. And that is the driving force behind this book. So their family has a lot of trauma that they haven't really been able to process, and it explains a lot of their behavior. So it's not like the other two books where there was like a parent who was like outright emotionally abusive, but it is a story about a family that is really trying to come to terms with like this horrible thing that there is a disease that runs in the family. And I will just say, you know, I didn't really know much about ALS before listening to this book, so I do think I got a better understanding of that disease. So that was good. I always love when I like come away from a book feeling like I've learned something. So that one was good. All right, so that was Abby Jimenez. The next author, there's two more authors I'll talk about. I don't think they're going to be quite as long as that because I didn't listen to 4, but Rebecca Ross, she wrote Divine Rivals, and then the sequel is Ruthless Vows. I listened to both of them. They're very popular. Ruthless Vows, yeah, I think I talked about Divine Rivals the last time I talked about books. So Ruthless Vows is the sequel. And the story follows Iris and Roman, who they live in this fantasy universe. It's really, the setting of these novels is so interesting and cool because it's almost like, I want to say like almost like a World War II era type of setting, because they have typewriters that are like a really big part of the plot, and just like other little things that are sort of like, oh, this is kind of set almost like in a past framework where the technology is not, you know, what we would see in a modern environment. And then it's also like this fantasy world where the world used to be ruled by these gods, and then they went to sleep and they've been dormant for a long time. And then all of a sudden they start waking up and they start wreaking havoc. The main gods are Deka and Enva. Deka is the male god, and Enva is the female god who was Deka's like lover, something of that kind. I mean, it was not a healthy relationship. Deka had basically, prior to the action of the story, prior to the gods waking up again, he had kind of like lured her to his realm, and had like blackmailed her into staying with him, and being his lover. So in Ruthless Vows, which is the sequel, you get a lot more of the gods. Because in the first book, they were kind of like just in the background, like you knew that they had started this war. And there were people on Deka's side and there were people on Enva's side, and they were fighting. In the second novel, you actually get to know the gods, especially Deka, a lot more. They become like main characters. And I loved this book. I loved both of them, but I like the sequel, I think, just as much as the first one, because I thought just the depiction of these gods was incredible. Like, Deka was basically, you know, this depiction of toxic masculinity, where all he cares about is power and control. And he wants to control Enva. He will stop at nothing, basically. And Enva, you know, she represents like the eternal feminine. She plays music. She wants, you know, she wants harmony. And the story is about her, you know, she just wants Deka like out of her life. But there's this war going on to try and like see who will have supremacy. Is it going to be Deka or is it going to be Enva? And I don't know. I just feel like this book was kind of written specifically for me. I loved just the depiction of the gods and all they represented, and just like how that battle between like toxic masculinity and like this beautiful feminine energy was just like writ large in this story. It was awesome. So I love those books. And I do not think there is another one coming out. I believe that the second one was the end. And then the last author I will talk about is Leigh Bardugo. This is one of my favorite new authors. The first one I read or listened to was Ninth House. I talked about that one in one of my other videos. Since then, I have listened to the sequel to Ninth House, which was called Hellbent. That one was also really good. It's also, you know, dark academia. It's set at Yale. The main character, a young woman, basically has to like rescue or try to rescue like the guy from the first book, Darlington. I didn't like the sequel as much as the first one, just because Darlington did not play as big of a part. For a lot of it, he was kind of like off screen, so to speak. He was, in the first book, you actually get like portions where he's narrating, and he had a much more active role, I feel like. And I loved his character. Darlington was one of my favorite characters from the first one. So the fact that he went a little bit on the back burner in the second one meant that I didn't like the sequel as much, but it was still really good. You know, I blazed through it in a few days because I love Leigh Bardugo, and I think all of her books are incredible. So that was Hellbent. The other ones I listened to, well, one of them was The Familiar. That one is relatively new, I think. This one is historical fiction with a little bit of fantasy thrown in. So it's set in like the early 17th century. It's set in the like 1600s over in Spain when the Spanish Inquisition is in full swing. And the main character, her name is Lucia. She is a scullery maid, so she's very low class, very poor. But she, you know, she has some like magical abilities. So the story is about all of the people around Lucia, like the mistress in the house where she is a servant, like her aunt, all of these, also her aunt, those are two different people, but all these characters, they see an opportunity in Lucia to try and exploit her magic, and they want her to go to one of these torneos that the king holds, where she will kind of compete with other people who may or may not have magical abilities, and the king will kind of decide, like, you know, is this person like a saint? Are they performing miracles? Or are they in league with the devil? The king kind of has like the say on on if the magic is good or bad. And the concept of it is that these people are like competing and performing different forms of magic to try and impress the king and impress like the aristocracy in this society. So Lucia herself, she is like, she kind of sees this as an opportunity as well. She is like, you know, if I do a good job, if I impress these important people, I'll be set for life. I won't have to be a scullery maid anymore. You know, she sees an opportunity here. So she does have a lot of agency in the novel in that, you know, she does want to compete. She wants to make this happen for herself. But you also see the tension of just, she is kind of being exploited by all these people around her. So for this novel, you're gonna have to be okay with historical fiction because it is pretty heavy into like the Spanish Inquisition stuff. I loved it. I thought this book was incredible. It was fascinating, and I didn't really know anything at all about the Spanish Inquisition. And I know that parts of this book are absolutely fantasy, you know. So some of it is totally made up, but some of it is like real. So I did come away from it feeling like I had learned a ton. And the characters, they were fascinating. I mean, Leigh Bardugo has a real talent. I would absolutely recommend this book. And the last Leigh Bardugo one I listened to was called Six of Crows. This one I think was written several years ago, and there is a sequel, which I'm planning to listen to at some point. They don't have it at my library, so I might have to like get an Audible membership for a while, because I would like to hear the sequel. And Six of Crows is about kind of this ragtag bunch of, like, I would call them sort of like street urchin kind of characters. Like the trope is that they belong to kind of a gang and they're really scrappy, and you know, they have to kind of rely on their smarts to survive. So it's a ragtag group. They get involved in this situation where a drug becomes available that, like, if you can get your hands on it, you're gonna make a lot of money. So they go on this quest looking for this drug, and the story is really complicated because the drug, it's actually evil because it's extremely addictive for this subjugated class of people called the Grisha. So the Grisha are exploited by society, and now that this drug has become available, they are even more at risk because the people in power are going to try to get the Grisha addicted to this drug, which allows them to have like certain magical powers, but at the same time, it is absolutely like toxic for the Grisha themselves. So that is the tension in the story. It is about a subjugated class, and one of the characters, who is named Nina, she is Grisha. So she is one of the people who is really at risk by the advent of this drug. So it was very interesting. And once again, this is one of my favorite new authors, so I just kind of blazed through it. And I am looking forward to listening to the sequel at some point. All right. That's all I had to say about audiobooks. Thank you if you stuck around to hear my thoughts on those books. It has been so much fun just to stitch and get some like reading in at the same time. So I'm always on the lookout for like recommendations. And I love watching Flosstube videos where people talk about books at the end, because that is where I've gotten a lot of great tips for things to read. I heard about Lee Bardugo for the first time on Kansas City Girl in a Colorado World, and now this is one of my favorite authors. So I would be interested to hear any recommendations. And anyway, I think I've rambled on for long enough. Thank you so much if you watched my video today, and I hope you are as excited about fall stitching as I am. Hopefully in my next video I'll be able to show off my finished Deadly Aquarium, and that will be really exciting. All right, until then, happy stitching!